Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by Milo Tree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blogger Genius. I'm really happy that you're here. Before I get started, I wanted to announce that our next coaching group is starting August 4th. So if you want to take your blog or online business to the next level, or you're just getting started and you really need some coaching and some direction, please go look at milotree.com/group and you can read all about it. It's a 6-week program. We show up live on Zoom as a group. David and I lead workshops where we go through step by step how to build an online business. We give you homework assignments. We look at your homework and give you feedback. There's a lot of personal attention. And I think it is really, it gives you the fundamentals you need to build a business, and you build it in real time. So these 6 weeks, you're building your business. Also, if you're interested, please come get on a call with me. If you go to milotree.com/meet, we can meet each other and we can just chat for a little bit, and I can hear about your business, give you some pointers and some tips, and see if it's a good fit. I'd love to meet you. Again, milotree.com/meet. Now, for today's episode, I have my friend Cheryl Norris on the show, and she is the blogger behind Bakes by Brown Sugar, and she makes some of the most beautiful desserts. I want you to go check her out and see her photography. So I actually asked her on the podcast to talk about her photography, where she learned it, how she does it. I mean, when I looked at her stuff, I thought, gosh, I think this is professional. So she really breaks it down. And she also talks about her recipe development, which I find fascinating. So if that's interesting, if you do food, even if you don't do food, but you take photographs, I think this podcast is really cool, has a lot of great takeaways. So without further delay, here is my interview with Cheryl Norris. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right, so we have met because you are currently in our 6-week coaching group, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. But okay, the reason why I wanted you to come on the show is because you are a food blogger, you do desserts, and you take some of the most beautiful photos I've ever seen. It looks like magazine quality photos. So first, what I wanted you to share was your entrepreneurial journey and how you got baking, and you have this interesting background. So yeah, will you share, because I don't even know your story.
Okay. Thank you. Again, thank you for having me. And that's the great question. So how I got started, I've always loved baking. I have since I was a kid. My mom was a baker, primarily pies, cookies, and bundt cakes. And it was just something I was drawn to. The first thing I ever remember baking was chocolate chip cookies when I was about 7 or 8. I begged my mom to ask, to let me make cookies. I really wanted to make chocolate chip cookies. And it's just something I've always loved to do. In terms of how the entrepreneurial journey started, I actually never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I'm happiest. I would call myself, I'm that kind of behind the scenes person, kind of making things happen. So that's like kind of been my sweet spot, my happy spot. And I think I was an accidental entrepreneur.
Well, wait, we have to talk about the fact that you are also an engineer.
Engineer by day, baker by night. You
go to school, you become you're a mechanical engineer.
Yes.
I mean, that feels in certain ways, it feels far from baking, but it also, though, seems like it relates, because I think of baking as almost like formulas that you're following, much more than cooking. Mm-hmm. Like it's chemical, it's like chemical reactions when you're baking.
It is.
Okay, so
it definitely is.
So you're an engineer, and then so you love baking. You're an engineer, yes, and then you think to yourself, "I'm going to start a blog."
Well, so it started with me just wanting to share my pictures on Instagram, share what I was baking with other people, because when you finish a bake and you're just like so excited about how it looks, how it tastes, and you're like, and I'm sharing the food with others, but I want to share the pictures. To me, it not only tasted good, but it looked good. So really happy when a dessert comes out looking like you want it to look. So started out sharing pictures on Instagram. And from Instagram, I discovered all these blogs of all these other bakers. And I thought, I want to do that. I want to share pictures and recipes. So I decided I was going to start a blog. And then once I started the blog, people were asking me, well, are you making any money yet? Are you making any money yet? And I'm like, I hadn't thought about making money because I just wanted to share recipes and pictures.
And wait, how long ago was this? Like, when did you actually start your blog?
I launched it in October 2018.
Okay.
Yes. So I've been blogging for a little over a year and a half.
So people are saying, are you making money? And it's like, what?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I can make money. And so, and everything I was looking up, I would Google stuff to just figure out how to run a blog, just, basic information, kind of all the techie stuff, like what plugins do I need? How do you make this thing work on your blog? And all these articles would come up. Oh, how to monetize your blog, how to get sponsored content. And this was like totally new stuff to me. And so so I launched it in October 2018. By January 2019, I decided, okay, I'm going to start treating this as a business. Mm-hmm. And so then it was like, okay, how do I do that? So I now know I want to do that, but how do I do that? How do I connect everything? How do I make sense of, how do I connect the blog, social media, Instagram, Pinterest? How do I make sense of all this interconnection between all of these different environments? And so just learning how to do that and just doing researching. But now I'm also just trying to put content on the blog. So it's just kind of like this whole push-pull thing, developing content, learning how to write, still practicing my photography, and then just, keeping up, trying to understand how all these different pieces work. And that's part of the challenge of being a blogger, is that you're doing this on your own. So it's like, well, who do I ask? And you look up stuff but it's like, okay, how do I know that this person's advice is really going to work, or it's valid? So yeah, just that whole challenge of doing all that and learning how to do all that.
Got it. Okay. So first of all, so you're working full time, and I know now it's quarantine, so it's a different world, but you would be working on your blog, I guess, on weekends. Like, when would you be baking, and how often when you started creating content, like how often would you put up a new blog post, that kind of thing?
So initially, I was probably doing about maybe 3 blog posts a month. About the time I started, I had a family member who became ill, and I was helping to take care of them, also helping provide care for them. And so it was kind of that, trying to balance all that. And I thought, oh, am I going to have the energy to do the blog? But I kept doing the blog because it was like, I was passionate about it, and it was kind of like my happy place. This was, even though it was that challenge, it was like, I'm happy doing this. And so initially it was just 2 or 3 recipes a month. And I was primarily baking on the weekends, testing out recipes. Initial recipes were things I had done in the past, things I was very familiar with. But the interesting thing was, even though I'd done these recipes before and they tasted great, it's like, as soon as I was saying, okay, I'm going to put this on the blog, it's like, now I'm having all kinds of issues with this recipe. Things aren't working, things aren't setting up the way I want them to. And one of the things I want to do in my blog is that when I put a recipe out there, I want it to work. I want to, I need it to work in my kitchen. I need it to taste good to me. And so that when I put it out, I can put it out with confidence and say, yes, this recipe works. The flavor combinations work, it all works. I don't want to put something out and say, well, it probably would have been better if I had added this ingredient, but I'm going to put it out anyway. No, I want to, what I'm putting out is what I made in my kitchen, and this is what works.
Right. And what we've talked about, especially in our coaching group, is this idea that you come at this with this engineering mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like creating these beautiful, and we haven't even gotten to photography yet. You create these unbelievable recipes, but there's like science behind it. There's kind
Yeah.
of moving parts, and that you want to be the sort, like you want to be saying to your audience, trust me. Like I
Yes.
know how to think through this. I
Mm-hmm.
know I know the science. I'm learning the science behind it. You can like if you do this, you will get this result.
Yes. And that's what I'm trying to share with my readers. It's been a journey. I recently said to someone, it took me about a year, but I feel like I finally found my voice in writing, because a lot of the blogs out there, they were sharing like like a lot of personal information, and that seemed to be the popular thing. And I initially tried that, but it really wasn't me. It wasn't my natural sounding voice. Yes, I can, I'm comfortable sharing like, oh, this recipe, like it took me 10 times to get this. I was so frustrated, or I kept getting interrupted by this, that stuff sounds natural. But I finally figured out my natural voice was to kind of share how I worked through this recipe. How do you do certain elements of the recipe? How all the ingredients work together on the recipe, so it made sense to people who are reading it. Kind of going through the steps of, hey, make sure you do this. It's important to have cold butter, or it's important for these um, ingredients to be room temperature. What's room temperature? And so just kind of going into the details of how that all works together.
So it's like you make beautiful things and you also want to geek out.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, I'm definitely a baking science geek. Yes.
Exactly. And I love that because I mean, David and I are also like, if you can tell me what room temperature butter is and why I need it to be room temperature, why I need my eggs to be warm, I am your girl. Like that
Yes.
speaks
Okay.
to me versus, oh, hey, just kind of put it together and look, you end up with this beautiful pie or this thing. I want to know why. And I want to know that I know then about why I want the warm butter, and then I can take that into other recipes. Like going, nope,
Exactly.
we need the
Exactly.
warm. Here's why, because
Yep.
I know the science. So I love that you are my geeky recipe, my geeky baking best friend, you know?
Okay. I'll take that. Yeah, I
Okay.
like that.
Okay, so let's then talk about photography because honestly, I saw your blog and I really thought to myself, I don't understand how she takes such beautiful photos. She must be a professional photographer. And it's funny because in our coaching, one piece of feedback that I continue to have for you is I want to rough you up
I
almost as a counterpoint to the fact that your photos look like they're out of Bon Appetit. And so therefore I want to be like, no, I want you to humanize it to say, no, I really am just like a weekend baker who loves baking, but I'm not
Yeah.
professionally trained. So let's talk about photography. How did you get into it? How did you learn about it? Like, what are your tricks? Because I want you to also be like the geeky photographer who's going to tell me like, no, you need to set your f-stop at this, or you need this kind of background or whatever. Because I feel like you've taken like how you think about baking. It looks like you kind of put that same mindset on photography.
I actually have. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. So I actually got into the photography. So I've always loved to take pictures. Even as a kid, my mom had those cameras. I know I'm dating myself, but it's with the flashes that had four sides that you put on top of the camera and they popped, and you're throwing out these bulbs. So I got into the food photography, again, going back to Instagram, just wanting to share my pictures with others. And I actually started with my iPhone. I started with the iPhone 5, taking pictures and posting them on Instagram. And then when I wanted to start a food blog, I said, okay, I have to get a little bit more serious about the photography. So I pulled out my DSLR, which was, I think, a T6 Rebel, which by the way sells for about $60 on eBay today. But that's how old. But my thought was, start with what I have. Don't go out and buy a whole bunch of new equipment, which would be my advice to anybody who's looking to get started. Start with what you have. And so my goal was to just understand the different elements of food photography and how to do it right. So I just started practicing with that camera. And at that point I was using a combination of my iPhone and my DSLR, and this trying to understand all the, how to use the camera. Do I use one of the programs? Do I use manual? ISO setting, aperture, shutter speed, just trying to understand how those all work together. And I took tons and tons of pictures. I used to joke to people, I felt like I had to take 200 pictures to get like 6 good ones for the blog.
I feel that way all the time. Like my mother-in-law will be like, "Oh my God, you take such beautiful pictures." And I'm like, if you take as many pictures as I take, just by chance, one of them is going to be good.
Yes, exactly. So that's, I mean, just learning how to use the camera. I did eventually, last year I did upgrade to a nicer camera because I felt I was ready, because I felt like I understood enough of the basics of how I need to use the camera. Because if you don't know how to use a camera, having an expensive camera is not going to make you a better photographer.
So what did you get? What did you get? What's your new setup?
My new setup is a Canon 6D.
Okay.
And one of the things I also learned was that I needed a really good tripod. The first tripod I bought was a little cheap tripod. It was like $30. And again, I did that because I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to stick with this. So I don't want to put a whole lot of money up front, and like $30 for a tripod, which, by the way, it fell apart, I think, after 3 months because, hey, it's $30. But it's that level of investment. If it's like, if you find that, no, this isn't for me, you haven't put out a ton of money. But then if you like, okay, I am going to be more serious about this, then you can go to that next step and get that really good tripod that's going to stay steady. Because even the cheap tripod, I had troubles with that. It would have a lot of shake in it. If I touched the camera too hard, it would shake, and then the picture would be blurry. So that's one of the reasons you want a really good, steady tripod that's just, it's going to sit and not be wobbly, and can do the things that you need to do. So I got the Canon 6D, and once you understand the basics, all the features of a camera like that, they really do help you take better photos. But again, it's understanding the basics that'll get you there. Like if you don't know how to use the camera, again, your photos may not be where you want them to be.
Now, in terms of light, because one thing that I think is so beautiful about your photos is the way that you use light. So what are you doing, and how did you learn that?
So that was again, a lot of research. So when I started my blog, I started in October, so not a whole lot of daylight left. And so a lot of my initial—
Where are you located?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, by October, mid-October, like, I don't know, maybe like 12 to 3 on a Saturday, or Sunday to take photos. So reading a lot, trying to understand the difference between natural light and artificial light. So some of my early photos are me just trying to work with artificial light, which was to this day continues to be a struggle for me. I'm pretty fortunate in that in my house, one of the big windows faces the north side, and having that north facing light is just a gift, because that on the north side, that light is naturally filtered. So even on a bright sunny day, I've got trees near the house that help filter that light, so it's not a harsh light. And then as clouds move in and out, it just continues to filter that light. So I do have to pay attention to weather and things like that, because that if you have a lot of variable weather, it can affect the light. But yeah, I just happen to have an ideal setup where I have this big dining room window that faces the north side.
So you don't shoot with artificial light?
No, I would say 95% of my photos are with natural light. I do have a light that I use sometimes to maybe bump up, like it mimics that same Kelvin or temperature range of the natural light, to maybe bump it up as it's maybe getting later in the day and I really need to get this photo done. So I kind of bring it in just as a kind of as a boost.
Hey, are you a blogger or entrepreneur who loves their business but is a little overwhelmed with all that you have to do in a day? Well, you are not alone. We all feel this way. So I want to share a pop-up tool that will increase your social media followers, grow your email list, build your traffic, and it is called MiloTree. MiloTree is a pop-up app that my husband David built for our first site, Catch My Party. In the 4 years that we've been using the MiloTree pop-up on Catch My Party, our Pinterest account has grown exponentially to over 1.1 million followers. And our Instagram has grown to over 160,000 followers. And these social networks now drive millions of page views to our site every single month. MiloTree works to grow followers on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It'll grow your sales on Shopify or Etsy, and it will even grow your email list. You can focus on growing one platform at a time or switch between several. The choice is yours. MiloTree. It's easy to install. You can do it in under 3 minutes. It's completely optimized. Right now, you can get your first 30 days for free. Just go to milotree.com to sign up for your free trial. If you are not converting your site visitors into followers, subscribers, and customers, you need to change your strategy. To take the first step, head over to milotree.com and start your free trial. There's no risk, and you'll be joining thousands of other professional bloggers who are already using MiloTree to grow their businesses. As a bonus, once you sign up, I'll send you valuable business tips each week to help you continue to accelerate your growth. You can't be everywhere all the time, so let MiloTree work for you. It's fast, it's easy, and it gets results. So what are you waiting for? Head to milotree.com and start your free trial. Did you take a course to learn about photography? Did you just read a ton of stuff about it? Like when your compositions are beautiful. I mean, one, your desserts are beautiful. Your compositions are beautiful. So is it that you just have this innate ability to just kind of see a shot and take it? Or are you using your kind of scientific mind to go, oh, here, this is going to go in the foreground. This is going to go in the background. You know, how do you think about it?
No, none of that was innate.
Okay.
So I'll be honest about that. There's an online course called Foodtography School, and so I signed up for that because that seemed to answer a lot of the questions I have, like how do you arrange your food? How do you do the editing? How do you get that? Because I like the light, airy feeling that you get with food photography. They're different styles, and so I think one of those things is understanding what your style is. One of the things I did was create a mood board to help me understand what I liked in terms of the colors and the lighting. So you kind of see that reflected in my photos on my blog and on Instagram. That style is what I like. So I took that course just to learn more about food styling, some of the basics of arranging your food, following all those different rules, like the golden ratio, the golden triangle, in terms of how you place your food.
Okay, what is the golden ratio? Is that like thirds?
Yes.
And a kind of
so
like,
that's, and then that,
like
yeah,
a grid?
and so, yeah, and then there's the other part of it where follows the Fibonacci circle. I don't know, did you ever see that Disney movie with Donald Duck, and it's that math movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No. So that's it. So they're talking about the Fibonacci circle.
Right.
So that's part of that golden ratio.
Okay.
Where you've got that circle that kind of spirals in.
Okay. But I just have to say, I can't believe that we are talking about Fibonacci, which you're so speaking my language as like a geek myself and somebody who loves math. Yeah. So the fact that like you and I are on a podcast talking about Fibonacci sequence, series, whatever, and that we're talking about it in terms of food photography is just like blowing my mind. I love it. Okay, so keep going. So yes, the Fibonacci. So it's kind of like, for people who don't know, it's a series, and isn't it? It's like 0 plus 1 is 1, and then you take the other two numbers, 1 plus 1,
1 plus 1, yep.
And it's just this series, and you find it in nature. It's like a
Hmm.
seashell almost, like that. It's
Yep.
like a spiral, and it
Hmm.
weirdly shows up in nature. It shows up in math, of course. It shows up in investing. Like it's just one of these like natural laws that
Yep.
is very powerful. So I didn't know that you could use Fibonacci in photography, but go ahead.
Yeah, and to your point that it's natural, it's it's kind of that whole idea of the natural lines and where your eye ends up falling when you're looking at a photo.
Mm.
So you like in that instance when you think about that line starting out and getting the tighter circle, and then the center of that circle is where you want the viewer's eye to land. So
Mm.
everything else is just kind of leading up to that. So like if you have a cake, maybe leading up to that cake you've placed a cutting knife or a bowl of whipped
Oh,
cream, or,
interesting.
yeah, or kind of along that line, and then it just all leads to the center of that cake or the center
Nice.
of that dish.
Nice. Okay, so are you sitting here when you are taking photos going, well, I want this here and the knife here and this, like are you actually like is it innate now or is it like you are literally going, okay, here is the journey that I want people's eyes to follow?
So I'm still learning and practicing. What I've started doing is sketching out um, the yeah, sketching out my photo, the kind of the placement of everything, kind of starting there, kind of following those rules.
Hmm.
There's another blogger I found. It's called the Food Photography Academy. I know they're two totally different things, but they sound very familiar. And so, one thing I like about her site is that she's provided all these grid lines that you can download and then use for sketching out your all your placement, and it saves you a ton of time if you like take that, I don't know, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes, just kind of think about how you want to place everything and how it lines up with all the lines so that your viewer's eye is drawn to the thing that you want them to be drawn to. So it could be that slice of cake, it could be the middle of the bowl with the soup. Just thinking about how you want that photo to appear to the person who's going to be viewing it and how it makes that food look appetizing.
Got it. Because I want people after they listen to this podcast to go to your food, to your blog and see your photos. And I think maybe
Yeah.
it is this stuff that makes it feel so professional.
Yeah.
So like I'm not just like a mom who's baking, with two kids two kids around and I'm just kind of taking
Mhm.
photos of my stuff. There's like intentionality to your
Yes.
photos that I pick up. I don't even know why I resonate with them so much, but I do, and I bet it's because of Fibonacci.
No, it does work, and I'll be honest. When I first started this, I didn't know a lot of this stuff. I mean, I knew about the rule of thirds in terms of if you take a grid and you divide a rectangular grid and you divide up into thirds, and you kind of want your food in one
Like
of the
almost
like
where the lines cross.
yeah, or to the left or to the right, kind of like how people's we read from left to right, so kind of following people's natural tendency to go from left to right. I mean, I knew about that, and I'll be honest, a lot of my early photos were that worked for me were by accident. I mean, they just like to that point, I took 200 photos and I found six that like, oh, I love these photos. Like they're in focus the way I want them to be. The food placement looks great. I'm so happy with this. And, so I published it. But now as I'm getting more into just kind of the rules of taking the photography, it's becoming easier for me to set up the shots because that's one of the things that I used to really, really struggle with. And I still do a little bit. I was doing a cake yesterday, and it took me forever just to kind of find that right placement of things. And I took tons of pictures with this cake because I was just trying to figure out, okay, where do I place the cake? Where do I place the bowl of berries? Where do I place the cutting knife? And I was following the rules, but um, you know, just trying to figure out the right combination that just kind of popped and or as we like to say, oh, okay, that's the money shot.
Mm.
That's the it shot. So
Mhm.
it's not that it always works for me, but having those rules kind of helps guide me. It gives me a place to start. And then from there, I can kind of play with the placement, the props, all those different things like that. But the rules, just like, like, where do I start? Where do I put the cake? Or, where do I put that bowl of whipped cream? Or, where do I put that slice of pizza? Or, whatever it is you're happen to make and you want to take a photo of.
So when you are creating, okay, so I love you because, again, I feel like you've got this very you're like very left brain and very right brain at the same time, and those seem to work really well for you, meaning you like the structure and you like the rules, and then you're so creative with your desserts and your food. So it's just an interesting, I feel like it's the perfect marriage of these two sides. Like how you were saying, it's my happy place. My hunch is it's because this is your creative space. And because you've got these rules that you can then use, and you're good at following directions and you're good at rules, it gives you almost like a playpen to play in, but with very specific boundaries.
No, that's a good point. And because I know the rules, once I understand the rules, like, making a cake, one of the things I've learned to do is read a cake recipe now. So when I go online and I read a cake recipe, I'm like, that doesn't sound like that's going to work. But it also frees me up when I'm working on a cake recipe. Okay, I know the rules, and now I know what happens if I add extra liquid. Maybe I want a certain texture, or I know what happens if I add more sugar or less sugar, or just, I know what happens, or if I add more fat, whatever the case might be, I'm following the rules. But when I want to kind of go outside the rules, color outside the lines, I have a feeling for what's going to happen, as opposed to, let me just throw in an extra cup of milk. See, I know the cake's going to be denser, it's going to be flatter, and that might be what I'm going for, but I know that going in.
So, okay, when you say to yourself, like you just made these donuts that are like insane, these chocolatey donuts. Can you explain what is the recipe?
So it's a yeast raised donut.
Okay.
So it's a basic yeast raised flour, milk, yeast, eggs, spices, salt. Yeah. That's
okay.
It's
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
But when you say,
you were saying, it's the s'mores donuts. I'm sorry.
S'mores donuts. That's it. Yes, I knew it was chocolatey and stuff, but they're beautiful. Okay. So you set out to go make a recipe. How much time do you spend researching? How many times do you make the recipe? And how long does it take you to shoot the photos?
Okay. So in that instance, with the yeast raised donuts, I had all these different recipes. I was researching recipes, and typically what I do when I'm trying to figure out how to make a recipe or what works, I'll go to different sources. I have a lot of cookbooks, trusted resources. There's some online resources that I really trust. And I actually do a grid where—
Of course you do. Yes. You're my girl. Go ahead.
So I actually do a grid, and I start writing down how much each of these different recipes, the amounts that they're using of these different ingredients. Sometimes it's trying to understand, because I'm trying to understand how this recipe works and why it works. I did that recipe 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
Trying to figure out what's the right amount of yeast, what's the right amount of flour. And one of the things, if you're recipe testing, is not to change too many of the ingredients at one time.
Okay, so then you make the donuts. So it takes you, how long would you say, do you spend a whole day doing, like you said you did it 4 or 5 times?
Yeah. That probably took me about 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, again, working during the day.
Yep. Okay.
On the weekend. So that probably took me about 3 or 4 weeks to go through all the different versions.
Okay.
To get that donut right.
And then how long is your photo shoot?
My photo shoot can be anywhere from, it's at least an hour. It's going to be at least an hour to just maybe 2 hours. And that's just kind of maybe working with props, doing different things. Depending on what I have, like a cake, first I'm taking pictures of the whole cake, and then I'm cutting the cake, and you got to cut the cake just right, and then kind of set up again to show the cake slices. So it's at least an hour. Even when I think, this is only take me 30 minutes. This is so easy. This is just like cookies. It takes me at least an hour to 2 hours. And then if you add cleanup, because I can start with a perfectly clean kitchen when I start my photo shoot, And at the end of the photo shoot, I don't know how it happens. My kitchen is like a mess again. So add on another hour for, just like cleaning up the kitchen, putting all the food away. So yeah, I would say easily 1 to 3 hours for a photo shoot.
Now, what about photo editing? What do you use for photo editing?
I use Lightroom, and I'm learning to use Photoshop. Photoshop is good when you want to remove something, like oh, I can't believe I left the tip of that fork in the picture. I can't believe I missed that. So I mainly use Lightroom.
Lightroom. Okay. Mm-hmm. And how long do you take editing your photos?
I take, oh golly, it depends. Sometimes I feel like I get really lucky and I end up with all these amazing shots. So I'm like trying to decide which shots to use. So maybe an hour and a half. I'm getting quicker because I'm learning just more of the functionality of Lightroom. So I typically like to come away with 8 photos for the blog, for Instagram, for Pinterest. So I say for me, it's maybe an hour and a half just to go through my photos, find the photos, and do the editing on them.
Cool. Okay. Gosh. So this is a very, each recipe then is a very big undertaking.
Yeah, it is.
Like it's a labor of love.
I think it is. Yeah. And even the recipes I think are going to be simple. Like last year I did a salted pecan brown sugar cookie. I thought, oh, this is going to be easy peasy. Because my original thought was, what if you made a chocolate chip cookie without the chocolate chips and you just doubled the amount of nuts? And so the first thing I did was I just took out the chocolate chips, increased the amount of nuts. And I ended up making that recipe 4 times because each time, while the cookie was good, my husband has given himself the title chief taste tester. So he was like, they're good. It was like, it's not quite there. Like it's a good cookie. And like the third version, I had taken pictures, I was ready to post, and I was just like, it's not quite there. So, I ended up doing a 4th version that finally was there. So yeah, sometimes there's recipes where like, this like tastes amazing. Like I've made recipes where I'm taking pictures and everything, and I go to taste it, and it's just like, yeah, this is not going to work. I gotta start all over.
Oh my gosh.
Well, like whole cakes, like a layer cake, I can't taste it, and it looks like it's working. It looks great, but then I go to taste it. I think it was I think it was one of the first cakes I did at the beginning of the year. It was orange butter cake, and I ended up making that 4 times.
Wow.
Because each time I thought I had the recipe. Like I think the 3rd time, when I first cut into the cake, I'd taken the pictures and I cut into the cake, and it tasted good. Like that first day, it tasted good. And then the second day I tasted it, it tasted dry. So I ended up doing a 4th version that finally worked. But yeah, it just, cookies are easy because I can taste that one cookie and tell it's not right. I don't go through the whole effort of taking photos and then figuring out it didn't work.
Wow. Okay, you are so dedicated. Now let's talk just briefly, because you are in our coaching group, and it's 6 weeks, and David and I run this a couple times a year, how this has been for you and what the experience is like going through it, and what your biggest takeaways have been, like what you like the most and what your biggest takeaways have been. And do you think it's worth it? Like, has it helped you in terms of growing your business?
Okay. So with regard to the coaching group, the Milo Tree coaching group, I will say that first phone call that you and I had, when I'd gotten the email about the coaching group, and I was uncertain, and you had said, hey, in the email, you'd said, let's schedule a meeting and talk about what the group can do for you. And then in that, I think we were on the phone maybe 45 minutes. Just in that short conversation, you gave me a lot of good advice about my website. Things I hadn't considered before, like causing me to think about how others might see my website in a totally good way. But I thought, okay, I think she knows what she's doing. So really, I mean, really that phone call, I think really made the difference, because I got a feel for the direction you were heading, because you got in that phone call I had with you, you got very detailed about some minor changes I can make to my website. We talked a little bit more in detail about the coaching group, about, doing the technical analysis of the website. So I decided to go ahead and, kind of take the leap of faith, and it really was based on that phone call. If we hadn't talked, I probably wouldn't have signed up. So the coaching group has been excellent for me. Just in that first week after I signed up, and David went on the back end of my site to make some fixes, that did wonders for my traffic. He found a conflict between the SEO plugin I was using and my recipe card that I was using, and he disabled one of the features in the SEO software, and all of a sudden my posts were appearing on Google's. They were appearing higher in Google's ranking. My recipe cards were appearing higher. Previously to that, the only time I saw my recipe cards was when they were coming from another site that maybe I'd shared, recipe sharing site. That's primarily when they would appear. So of course the traffic is going to that recipe sharing site, and then maybe it comes to my site if someone does that extra click, but now it's appearing from my site. So I feel just that alone was worth the cost of the course, because seriously, that right. I would have never known, because the two plugins that were in conflict, they weren't stopping each other from working. The plugins by themselves were working exactly as they should, but I just didn't know that it was blocking Google from actually just seeing the information that it looks for when it's like, the whole algorithm, and it's, scrubbing websites for information. And so that just alone, and I think the other thing that's been helpful for me in the coaching group are the assignments, because it makes me accountable. All these things I keep saying, okay, I'm going to do this better, I'm going to do this. Being part of the coaching groups makes me accountable to actually get those things done within a time period. And I'm learning stuff as I go, like learning a better way to write pins, learning a better way to outline my posts as I'm preparing for them, like the Pomodoro method that we started, that we talked about last time. I'd heard of that method before, and it was one of those things, okay, I'm going to do that. I just never seem to have time to do it. But, kind of having that assignment to say, okay, do this and report back to the group on how it's working. So it just, again, it's being part of that group gives you a certain level of accountability to accomplish these things.
Right. And well, our intention is at some point, you're back to your house. And again, we have our continuing group, but really it's like 6 weeks of you do stuff so that you understand how to do it. So when you leave, you don't go, oh yeah, I think that was in the course there, but it's like, oh no, I've actually gone through this and done it. So I know how to, so I'm starting to get muscle memory. Oh, this is how I do it. This is how I think about the intentionality of this post. Yes. And so I feel like, and as you know, like my feedback for you has always been, I want to rough you up. I want people to totally get that, like, you've got my back and that you are doing the recipe 4 times. So I can totally trust you that, if I'm going to make s'mores donuts, I'm using your recipe because I know that you haven't just kind of thrown this together, but like there is real work behind it. Mm-hmm. And so so that's always been my feedback. And then the other one is to recognize how the difference between like perfection and getting something done.
Yes.
So that you can put stuff out there. Even when it, I always say, email me your post and I'll tell you if it's embarrassing, because my instinct is to always say, let's get you moving, get people moving. So I feel like you've taken that to heart.
No, and it really is beneficial because like one of the changes you had me make to my website was to put the recipe categories at the top of the menu bar. I was kind of following what I saw on other sites where you have the home about the link to the recipe index, and you said, no, put your recipe categories across there, your cakes, your cookies, and things like that. Now, I had thought about that before, like, okay, that's the change I'm going to make someday. I'll get to it. But, being part of this group, again, going back to that accountability and actually, and I guess the really good thing about the group is that in the 6 weeks, I'm actually moving my business forward. I'm not sitting in a series of lectures, getting this theory, and then, okay, after the course, I'll go do it. No, during the 6 weeks, I'm actually moving forward in my business.
Oh, I love that.
So it's not for lack of a better word, it's not a waste of time. I'm actually accomplishing things that I know that I needed to accomplish. For whatever reason, I wasn't getting them done, or maybe I knew I needed to do them, but I wasn't sure how. And so having that resource to ask, is this the way you do it? Kind of getting that feedback of how it's working. And I've seen an increase in my traffic. I've seen increase in the number of visitors, but also just in the number of page views that, people are on my site, they're going through more of my recipes while they're there.
And do you like that the people in the group are in different verticals?
I do, that because it's a different perspective, different way of looking at things, but at the same time, the advice is I can still apply it to my site and how I'm running my business, because when you're talking to the different people in the group and you're saying, hey, what are your most popular posts? Or, you're talking about homeschooling, what are the topics that are resonating with your readers? Or how do you zero in on that? Yeah, I'm not doing homeschooling, but the whole idea of, what's resonating with my readers, what's popular, what are people clicking on, that still applies to my site. It's just a slightly different perspective. And then of course, people are just coming with questions I hadn't thought about, or resources that I didn't know were out there, but they knew about. So they're mentioning it in the coaching group. So it's also really great from that perspective. Just having that variety of experiences.
Well, I'm glad that we love working with you. And as you see, we dig in and we look at your back end, and David's there, fixing stuff, and we care. And it's really fun for us to see you grow and to see you blossom, and to see you change, have more fine. You are the person who loves the charts and graphs and stuff. So it's like, if we can give you a framework to think about your business, I think for somebody like you, that makes sense for you.
Yeah. It does. What are the specific steps that I need to take to get this done? What are kind of the outlines or the ingredients of a really good post?
Absolutely. Okay, now we have to talk about the Great American Baking Show. Just briefly, we have to talk about the fact that you were a contestant on the show.
Yes.
And that was when we got on the phone the first time, because I had read that in your bio. I was like, oh, we must talk about this. So what was, just briefly, being somebody who's been on a reality show, like a really nice reality show, what was that like?
That was just an opportunity of a lifetime, like literally, like that exact thing won't happen again. And people have heard me before, they see my blog. I say this all the time. It was the most stressful fun I've ever had, because so we get to practice the bakes at home. The month of July is called Baking Boot Camp, and they send us the categories that we have to come up with recipes for. So we're practicing at home. You're figuring out, okay, what can I get done within the 3, 4, 5 hours that I've been given? So you're working that out. But then you get there and it's just like, the pressure is like totally different. 4 hours at home is nothing like 4 hours in the tent. 4 hours in the tent goes by like incredibly fast. One of the cakes that I did them at home. It was like a little mini cake. I did it at home. I forgot how much time we had, but I was able to accomplish at home. It looked so pretty. And then I'm in the tent and it's just like, they announced, bakers, you got 10 minutes left. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even have all my buttercream on. And the Chris, one of the other bakers, he had the station right in front of me. He turned around and helped me finish. But it was like when it was all done, like, and they looked like a hot mess. Fortunately, the judges really loved them. But it's just like, what happened to that time? Like at home, this was just like, this like worked. And then when you're in the tent, it's just like 4 hours they go by just incredibly fast.
Wow.
And yeah, and then the experience was great because everybody was so nice, from the time my first in-person audition to the behind the scenes crew, to the culinary crew that like did all our dishes and everything like that. Everyone was so nice and so supportive, so welcoming. Yes, we're here to do a show. Yes, we're on schedule, but yeah, like everyone was so nice. So that was one of the things that made it a really great experience. And then because yes, I'm competing against the other bakers, but it really isn't, it's really about how you do as an individual. It's not like a tennis game where, you got to like outsmart the other opponent. It really is just how you do in that moment and how it tastes. So, we were really friendly together. We would sit and chat all the time, go out to dinner, just, do stuff together outside of, being on the set. So it was just a really great experience.
Oh, I love that. Was the first thing I asked you when we got on the phone. I was like, oh my God, you've really been on the show like this.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay. So Cheryl, for people to reach out to you, to see your beautiful blog, can you tell people where to go and how to get in touch with you, that kind of thing?
Yes. So for my blog, it's Bakes by Brown Sugar at www.bakesbybrownsugar.com. And then I'm on Instagram at Bakes by Brown Sugar. And then I'm on Pinterest also at Bakes by Brown Sugar. And on my blog, you can reach out to me. You can DM me on Instagram, or you can also connect with me through my blog.
Oh, I love it. Well, Cheryl, this has been such a pleasure. And as soon as I saw your photos, I said to David, I need to interview her on the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you came on.
This has been really great. This has been fun. I like talking about baking. And, photography unexpectedly became a passion of mine. So I like talking about that too.
I hope you got some good photography tips and recipe development tips. What I really appreciate is how thorough Cheryl is, and you can see how, as part of her brand, she's incorporating her engineering mind. And in your own business, I think there's a real important lesson there, which is, what is it? I like to call it your special sauce. What is it about you that makes you unique? So Cheryl takes beautiful photos and she makes beautiful desserts, but she has this additional layer, which is she's got this scientific mind and she's adding that to her recipes. And therefore, gosh, if I have to make a beautiful treat, a beautiful dessert, I am going to Cheryl's blog for that reason. So just think about that in your own business. I think there's something really powerful about that. And again, this is the kind of stuff we teach in our coaching group. If that's interesting to you, please come get on a call with me. I really want to hear about your business. I want to hear where you are and where you'd like to be. And I'll let you know how we could help you get there. So please head to milotree.com/meet so we can meet. And again, milotree.com/meet. You can sign up for a time and we'll just get on a call. And I'll see you here again next week.